I was talking earlier about the Invictus Games on the back of the trailer being released for Prince Harry's new Netflix doco. Let's take a look at a bit more of it.
It is here at the Invictus Games that you realise, whatever you carry, it was the springboard that propelled you to the next level. The Games doesn't focus on what causes the injury, but really about the recovery and how to be part of a community again.
Now let's bring in a British commentator and fellow woman in neon, Esther Krakue. Fabulous to have you with us. Look, are you looking forward to the next doco and the Games?
Yes, the Royals go Hollywood, although I'm sure Harry and Meghan have already broken that trend once before, if you can remember. The Invictus Games is starting in a few weeks and is starting off in Düsseldorf in Germany. So the Prince is going to be flying over to be overseeing the ceremonies and the sporting events and all of that. And, Meghan is actually going to be there at the beginning of the opening speech and the closing ceremony. So she's not going to be there for the entirety of it. But this is something that Prince Harry pioneered back in 2014 when he was still an active working member of the royal family. And it was for veterans of war to get involved in sport and as a way of bringing them and tying them into its communities. Now, obviously, it was a very popular initiative when it was first launched. I don't know if you remember that video of him and the Obamas and the Queen with their mic drop. But, it was very much a viral moment here and around the world. So it was something that we knew that was something very near and dear to his heart. And after leaving the royal family, he still tried to keep it up. The question is whether it has the same gravitas and whether people still warm to him in the same way. It's still a fantastic initiative. But he talks about duty and a sense of community and all of that. And his actions in the last few years make people think that he's not as serious about those words as he seems. But I do hope it goes well for him. It's around the time of the Queen's, the first anniversary of the Queen's funeral. So questions are still open as to whether he is going to come to the UK and, commemorate that with his family. Apparently, the royal family hasn't reached out, and they've made it very clear that it's probably going to be a closed family event. But we don't know. Things could change. He did come for the King's coronation after all. But so far, that's what we know about the Invictus Games and Prince Harry flying over.
And what do you think the reaction will be in the UK with him travelling back to Europe?
I think so far as he doesn't step foot in the UK, I think most people will not be bothered, to put it bluntly. I think there will be obviously some disappointment around the fact that he's not coming for the Queen's one-year anniversary of her funeral. That's really going to be a very sad moment. But it's very clear that the sort of rift between the Sussexes and the royal family is well and truly done. And I really don't see an easy way back. But most people are just getting on with their lives. They're not really that bothered about the Sussexes. They're expecting some sort of, Netflix documentary or some sort of a further foray into the world of Hollywood and of production and, of charity work. But that's really the extent to which people are interested in anything that the Sussexes have to do.
Now, you did mention that Meghan was only going to go for the closing ceremony and not the whole event. Do we know why that is?
So we're not sure why. I'm speculating that it has maybe something to do with childcare, but there have been reports over the last few weeks that Meghan is really trying to distance herself from the image of Harry and Meghan and try and, carve her own path and her own image. We're not too sure about that. She is set to release a few books as part of the multi-book deal that Harry and Meghan signed. But, we're not sure about that. They've been very, very hush-hush. The rumours that we've been hearing is that they're trying to really consolidate all the progress that they've made over the last few years and really create projects that will last or stand the test of time, really. After they lost the Spotify deal, everyone was assuming that, the Hollywood shine was sort of waning and then they were seen as a bad investment. So I'm sure they're focusing on strategizing and trying to create content and, to create initiatives that will actually stick this time, that probably have a bit more longevity. That's all we know from their camp, but we don't actually know the specifics as to why Meghan is not going to be there for the entirety of the Invictus Games.
Now, Esther, there's always keen eyes watching public figures, and someone has apparently noticed that Harry's hair looked different in Singapore to a recent photo shoot. Tell me it's just the lighting.
Unfortunately, it's not just the lighting. And anyone used to any sort of filtering, filtering and airbrushing varies by country and by region, according to the local beauty standards, will realize that Prince Harry has kind of been a treatment to some famous beauty standards in that part of the world. His skin is noticeably fairer, which I didn't think was possible because he's ginger, he's very fair. But his hair has also been filled out, and it's noticeably very fake. You can see quite obviously the airbrushing at the top. He kind of looks ridiculous. I'm not sure he was behind this. I'm pretty sure he didn't ask for this because he does look a bit like a caricature. But I think he's got some treatment from someone who's a bit enthusiastic with Photoshop.
Now on to Princess Kate. We understand she's attended some fancy 24-hour rave party. Now, can you please run us through the details of this?
Yes, so she attended a rave at the estate of some lesser Norfolk royals, Rose Hanbury and her husband David. And apparently this is her first rave that she's ever attended that we know of in the public eye. But she did have a lot of fun. She was ordering spicy margaritas and enjoying affogatos, which is a coffee-based ice cream dessert. And she chose to eat at the nearby restaurant and apparently tipped staff £700. So she's a very generous tipper. She looked like she had a lot of fun. She was in flats, she wasn't in heels, she wasn't dressed like the polished royal that we're used to. And it looked like she had a good time. Apparently, the nobility scene in Norfolk, in that part of the country, are called turnip toffs, which I thoroughly enjoyed finding out about because I'm sure that's a term of endearment amongst themselves. But the royal family in particular, William, has had close ties to the Norfolk estate for a while. It was a gift, obviously, to Kate and William after their wedding in 2011 by the Queen. So they've always had this sort of relationship with Rose and her husband, David, and Rose is around the same age as Catherine as well. So they've always had a close relationship in that way. And it looks like, Princess Kate is just letting her hair down.
And so she should. We understand that someone has snapped a photo and that's already making the rounds. But we do understand also that Princess Kate and the host, Rose Hanbury, fell out at some stage, but apparently they're back friendly again.
Yeah, so these are obviously reports dating back to 2019 where apparently Rose and Kate had a bit of a falling out. So Rose, who was actually signed to Kate Moss's modelling agency, Storm, apparently she had friends in that agency that said that Kate and Rose had fallen out because apparently Rose was stealing her shine amongst the Norfolk nobility scene. I'm not really sure how true those rumours were, but it looks like they're still as close friends as ever. The idea that, the future Queen of England, well, of the UK, could actually have her shine stolen by anyone is quite ludicrous. But these were the rumours that we were hearing at the time. Obviously, that if they are true, they haven't come to very much because they're still closer than ever now.
Now, Princess Anne turned 73 this week, and Zara Tindall has lifted the lid on the Princess Royal's most annoying habit. Princess Royal is basically perfect as far as I'm concerned, so what is it, Esther?
So apparently, Princess Anne has a sponge brain. She apparently has a brain full of all sorts of random information that you'd never guess, which is pretty in line with her personality. She was always a very studious, very serious, and very committed royal. We remember that she was the first royal to ever attend school, and after she completed her A-levels, instead of going to university, she just decided to jump right into life as a working royal. So she's always been quite studious in that regard. She's been very no-nonsense, very honest in her views. And she looks like the kind of person that reads a lot and tries to educate herself on various things. So it's not surprising that she has a mind full of all sorts of random information that most people don't have.
Love that. Now, Esther, what's this story breaking over the weekend about King Charles calling an urgent meeting with Camilla and the Prince and Princess of Wales? It's been reported in a few outlets. Yes. What's it all about?
Yeah, so apparently this is fairly breaking news. The King has called a summit with, his wife and the next in line to the throne, and it coincides with the Queen's first year of her death. To talk about the strategy of the royal family. Now, King Charles has always been clear about the direction he wants to take the monarchy in. He's always wanted to slim it down, and he's wanted to focus on core initiatives. And I think he's given a bit more autonomy to the likes of Kate to pursue projects and initiatives that she's very passionate about. Now, we don't actually know the details of the summit, but given that it's almost 1 year since his mother, the Queen, passed on, it is understandable that he wants to know where everything stands. I'm sure he's had a few ideas about where to take the royal family, and obviously the topic of the Sussexes and Prince Andrew would have likely come up as it is the long-standing headache of the royal family. But at the moment, we don't know the details just yet.
And just on the passing of the Queen, we know that Charles isn't marking it publicly, but there has been a report this week about him honouring her in his own way. Yeah,
so he's spending 3 weeks at Balmoral, which is a tradition that the Queen always followed, instead of spending it at his own private estate in Aberdeenshire. And it gives a sense of continuity, which is very important in the royal family and the monarchy at large, because that's something that the Queen was very passionate about. And I think King Charles is making the point of following in her footsteps and making people understand the importance of, the legacy that the Queen left behind and following in those footsteps. So, it is a bit of a transition. I mean, today is the last day that the public can go to Balmoral, since the King and Queen will be staying there for 3 weeks. But it looks like he's keeping in tradition, and it's a good thing to see.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to see. Now, he's also planning his own birthday celebrations coming up in a couple of months. What's it going to be?
Yeah, so apparently he is adamant that he doesn't want a public celebration, which is understandable given the cost of living crisis. It would be tone deaf for him to have anything ostentatious in that regard. But apparently he is looking for a very, 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 very low-key family event. He's never been one for all the pomp and circumstance, at least when it's not when it's uncalled for. But it is still a few months away. I'm sure his mind isn't there. I'm sure he's just grateful for every year of life that he has. We know that he ascended to the throne fairly later on in his life, and so he is just keeping the ship steady for the future monarch.
Now, last week we spoke about King Charles heading to Kenya on a royal visit, but we also understand he's going to France next month. What's planned for that trip?
So the King and Queen are going to head to Paris next month after their trip was cancelled by all the riots that were going on in Paris, protesting various measures by President Macron. And they're going to go to Bordeaux after a few days. It's a 4-day state visit, and it just highlights the importance of the role of the king, who is our head of state, and the role that he has in maintaining good diplomatic relations with the likes of France. Obviously, there are loads of political hot button issues here in the UK, like the Channel migrants crossing from France mainly, and trying to stop that influx of migrants coming in via that medium, and all sorts of sort of conversations around the French, the EU, and all of that. So it's important for the king to represent the UK and to just maintain good diplomatic relationships with one of our longest-standing allies.
As always, Esther Krakue, thank you so much for joining us.